Okay, great. Yeah, so if you'd just like to introduce yourself and the farm a little bit, yeah, that's where we could just get started.
Okay, sounds good. I'm Chris Hemlock, and my wife Becky is with me today. And this farm was purchased 15 years ago. It was a fixer-upper. It hadn't been in use as a farm for probably more than 20 years. I'm not sure exactly how many, but a good number of years. And we were not planning on starting a full-fledged farm, but we had always wanted to kind of grow some of our own food possibly in that. And I had been worked on some dairy farms as a younger kid, so I had that in my head and kind of always desired to do some sort of farming again. So then after a lot of work fixing this place up, about 5 years into it, we decided we kind of got into the whole local foods and hadn't even been buying it ourselves, like raw milk ourselves from other sources, and then kind of decided might be something we'd like to do. And my late wife Megan was really, I guess, into it, and she wasn't necessarily into the farming, but she asked if I would like to do that, and I was like, oh man, I'd love to. I love farming. So anyhow, we decided to start that, and it'd be 10 years ago this summer, this past spring actually. We started a raw milk dairy, and pretty small, and then we're gonna offer grass-fed beef as well. And it's grown over these 10 years now to where we're providing raw milk to maybe 120 families or so, meat in the form of grass-fed beef, grass-fed lamb, pork, eggs, and then we sell some other products like local syrup from friends of ours and honey from bees that are on our farm that a friend keeps here. And then we have a friend that's also processing yogurt out of our milk, and we have the facility here, and that's pretty cool. It's her business. Dodo Yogurt is the name of it, and we kind of work in a kind of a partnership with that. So here we are today, and we've seen a significant growth in the past few years, which has been good. Challenges along the way, but I mean, the interest seems to be growing and hopefully maintaining a growth.
Yeah. What would you say your biggest challenges have been?
Well, growing pains are hard. Farming, in a lot of business, it's hard, but farming is, when you invest, you're not seeing returns for a long time, so it takes a lot of investment to grow, but you're not going to see those returns very quickly, and so it's hard to keep dumping money into something where you're getting a return but very little, and you know that over time it'll work. But farming in general, you always have setbacks, and that can be frustrating. We don't necessarily have a boss, but I do have a boss, and that's God, the weather, whatever you want to say. But I can't control that stuff, so I feel like that's stressful sometimes. The stuff that I can't control, because I'm a pretty hands-on type of person.
Keeps us humble.
It definitely humbles me. Yeah, my stress levels can grow when I can't control something. I like to manage stuff, and I can't do that with the weather and, certain conditions or cow's health. I can try to keep them as healthy as I can, or an animal, but I can't, if they have something and I can't do anything and I have to put it down, that drives me crazy. So just those kind of things.
And I think meeting demand during COVID, it seems like demand for beef really skyrocketed so quick, and it takes 2 years to grow a animal, so
you can't jump right on the growth train.
Yeah, if somebody suddenly wants a lot of milk, well, you can't.
And milk is
really
also
increase a all of a sudden either.
Yeah,
It takes a
thankfully
while.
we've been raising a lot of our own now, and we've been able to grow with our own. But like Becky said, our milk sales have increased, and we were running out a lot, and that was kind of frustrating. Like, oh, we could sell, we could finally grow and sell, and we can't. But this year we have increased a lot of our own heifers and that, so that's been really good, and we have more coming. So I think we have a good base now that we're able to keep up with some growth, and that's been really good.
Yeah. Now this must take up so much of your life. How do those stressors bleed into your daily life, if at all?
Well, pretty much is my daily life.
Yeah.
I do construction as well, but not near as much as I used to. Both jobs are similar in certain ways, whether I'm the owner, so I still have those kind of stresses. So I'm kind of used to the stress of being self-employed, but the farming stresses, carry over. And there's definitely times where my attitude shows it. I try to be.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, are you kidding? That's funny. So it definitely can carry over. Yeah.
I think it's hard for you to you can make a lot more money from construction in a short term versus farming, which is a longer term. But the farming's taking more time.
Right.
That's another part of the investment, not just the money, but
Time.
you got to put the time in there to get that point.
And I'm always looking for more efficient things, and I guess back to that investment thing, I could just take it easy and keep going the way we are, but I'm always like, I can do this more efficiently, and so that's just my way of doing things. So I'm always like upgrading or doing something, and
I always want to buy more equipment.
Buy more equipment to save on this, or it's just I do it the same thing in construction, but I think it's good. It's just sometimes I gotta learn to slow down and okay, you have this, use it, instead of going out and getting bigger is better kind of a thing. Mentality.
And I was thinking about soils, investing in the soils too, and that takes a
Super
really
long
long time. You got to put the time into that and the money into it. Mostly the time. It seems like time is more.
Yeah, that's been a big
soils,
stress.
And it takes, years, and then it's starting to produce hay.
We've had a lot of
pasture.
Land not given as in we don't own it given, but as in able to use it rent-free if I'm taking care of the land, and that's great, but it was pretty well depleted to nothing when I got it. It barely produced any hay, so I had to dump tons of money into it, and I'm getting a return, but it's I could have went out and bought all this hay. But in a dairy world, you got to have specific nutrient needs to make that milk, and cutting hay at the right time is key. And so I am doing that now and seeing a lot of benefits for our milk, but building those soils, like Becky said, is very long term, and it's fun to do, but it takes a lot of time.
That goes into the daily life thing. It seems like you're always cutting hay we have a lot of birthdays in the summer, so when it's time to cut hay, you gotta cut it, and you'll hopefully
it can
be done in
interfere.
time with the birthday party starts.
Interferes with family life, which is part of farming, and you just gotta get used to those things. But
we think it's really important to involve the kids in the farming, so it is our daily life. We're farmers,
right?
So they're all.
Well,
it's just part of their day every day. It's part of their school because they're homeschooled, and.
Do they get involved in the chores and everything?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, every morning they all have a chore, even when...
Some like it more than others.
Our youngest is 4, but even when she was 2, she would scoop out a thing of dog food or cat food and put it in the dish. Even before that, though, I think the first chore was just say good morning to Dad.
You have to get dressed and for the weather and come outside.
And so, but they're so used to it now. It's part of their life. And it's not necessarily that I want to make them all farmers, but I want them to appreciate food, the work it takes to produce food, and just work ethic in general. But, so many people don't even know, like, how food is produced or where it comes from. I at least want some younger kids in this world to know. So mine are gonna.
And the kids really have a purpose in it, too. Like, their job is to feed the cats. The cats don't eat unless they're feeding it, or they're each of them take care of a calf.
They have a real responsibility.
Yeah, I think it's really good for them.
And it helps me. I mean, it definitely helps on time.
And if I have to do their chores for some reason, it takes a long, long time. Because if you add up all the time they spend together, it's a significant amount of work.
Yeah.
So everyone on the farm plays, certain roles. So last time we were here, you talked about how the farmer is the educator, the vet, the seller, the producer. Mm-hmm. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
Well, it is true. You have to put a lot of different hats on. I think another thing that's important as a farmer is education, and not maybe like an education like you have to go to school to do this or that, but educating yourself through reading. There's a lot of different I don't even know how to say it, articles, magazines, books. I mean, there's millions of different things out there. Of course, with the internet, even more than ever. But, like, you can research a lot of things, and I'm one that is constantly reading. That's, like, my pastime. And so I enjoy that. And so I guess that's another thing I'm doing, is always researching to maybe learn something else, or like a farmer, another farmer, even talking to fellow farmers, like they'll be like, oh, I've done it this way, and you're like, I never even thought of that. And it's nice to hear different ways of doing the same thing. Like, farming is not one size fits all. Like, there's so many different ways to do things, and you can't badmouth a farmer for doing one thing. I mean, we all have our reasons. We're all trying to grow food. We're all doing it in the way we think is the best way possible. I mean, of course, we can argue about what's beneficial, sustainable, and all that thing, but I think farmers in general are trying their best to produce the best crop they can.
If you're out there doing field work, usually at least one farmer stops and comments or asks you about, why are you doing it like that? Yeah. It's a funny culture. But it's how they all learn from each other, and the wisdom is passed down. And the new knowledge is also integrated that way too.
Yeah, older men and women that have farmed, that aren't no longer farming, are good people to talk to. You learn a lot of information from them, and a lot of things that they may have done back then that's not as popular now, and you're like, oh, what? That still could work. So I think it's nice.
And then you share that information with other farmers, but also the customers and students, and
we have a unique place here because we have the public coming here, and then now more, well, I guess we've been doing it a while, but different students from different colleges or whatever, and it is, I think, a good thing. I mean, I didn't really realize that was going to be part of this whole selling raw milk to the community, but I think it's a good thing. Even though we're tiny, we're able to reach out a lot more to people than as if we were just some big farm on a dirt road in the middle of nowhere that didn't really interact with people. Not that we don't need that, but it's just a different opportunity that we have. So I think I'm learning to take advantage of that, and we can use it as a tool to teach.
Yeah, we sell a product too that is not well known what it is outside of certain circles. So there has to be marketing and educating about that too. Even our daughter Chloe, she works at like a sports shoe store, and everyone she works with is like, raw milk, ew. So she's like is an advocate for why you would want to drink raw milk, and no, it's not like raw meat, it just means fresh milk, So anyone we talk to out, it's an opportunity to teach about food and where it comes from, and chocolate milk doesn't come from brown cows.
What
do you guys want to move to a shadier spot, or are you okay? I don't know. I melt when it's hot.
I'm gonna be a little toasty here.
Yeah.
A little bit,
We can move.
but-
Pause it.
Okay, yeah. So you were kind of talking about how oftentimes people have misconceptions about farms and farmers and milk. So would you like to talk about like what you'd like people to know, or what misconceptions do you think exists about farms and farming?
Yeah. So, and Becky touched on the whole raw milk thing, like that's specific to us. I guess educating people on raw milk is important. I mean, I think that it can definitely be produced in a very healthy way and not have to be so afraid of the potential things you could get from it. I mean, I think with the cleanliness and farming, every state has different regulations, but for the most part, there's pretty sanitary methods now for milking cows, and I think it's good to have the state involved with our food. I think some rules may be a little overreaching than others, but all in all, I mean, it's nice for the public to know that it's getting tested and, you know, it's regularly being checked and that. I think that's all good.
The facilities are inspected.
Yeah.
Make sure that it's clean.
So I'm not against that. And then just farming in general, I guess people don't realize, you know, caring for animals in a humane way is important to us because we sure don't want to be killing our animals. They're a part of our livelihood. So animal care in some people's eyes may look differently than what it is in the real farming world. As far as like when to pasture, when not to, like, yeah, we want them outside on grass. That's kind of the point. But there's times when grass isn't growing, and if you leave them out there, you're gonna have a problem with your grass. It's not gonna regrow. You could actually hurt that field. So like learning like the proper ways, people don't realize that, you know, and some farmers tend not to put them out at all. And their reason behind that is also an important thing. They feel like they can care for the animal better in the environment that they have them in and then get the best possible grass they can. So there's two different ways of doing it and looking at it. And I think it's good for people to learn why they do it instead of just like, well, that's mean. And it's really, I don't think it's mean. I think it's just, you know, they're looking at it. We're looking at things differently. And we're both trying to get the same end result.
Yeah, they're not, there's a difference between animals that are pets and animals that are, you know, for food.
Production,
and we're treating them well, but it's not,
we
like,
want to
we'll
give
still
them,
butcher them when it's time to butcher them, because they're our meat.
Yeah, we want to give them, I mean, here at our farm, I want to give them the best possible life per se, like what this animal is intended to do. I want them to be out grazing as much as possible. We don't do that in the winter. We can't. There's snow all over. We could unroll hay. We do sometimes, but you're not going to get much milk, so you have to like sacrifice certain things. Like we are producing a product here, so I'm going to keep them inside where they're warmer, drier. They're actually going to produce milk instead of freezing outside. Yeah, they'll live, but they're not going to do a whole lot. I mean, so I think the general population doesn't really realize why you do all these different things. And it is hard to, I mean, thankfully here, I think it's hard for a lot of farmers to voice that. But here we do get those questions because people are coming here. And it is giving us an opportunity to tell them directly, show them why we do it. And they're like, oh, I never knew that, or I didn't even know. And I didn't know that all cows or all cattle can have horns. I thought it was just bulls. You know, that's a common one. Just a lot of little things that we just think's normal is not really viewed as normal. Separating a calf from a dairy cow. A common thing that's been done for a long time. There's a lot of controversy over that. I mean, we've done things where we calf share with the milk, or we put the cows in with the calves right after we milk, save a little milk for them, or we just have taken the animal and let the kids feed it a bottle. All those things have their different pros and cons. None of them are to be mean to the animal.
Yeah, we're just trying what works best to
Right.
balance the, make sure the needs of the animals are met, and then balance our need
Right.
to, our business is selling the milk. And
Right.
if it's healthier, if we can take care of the calves together, if we put a bunch of similar aged calves together in a pen, than just letting one be with the dairy cows. It might not be the best conditions for that calf, so
It's a learning
that's like a
experience
balance.
too, and that's a whole
Yeah.
nother thing about us learning as farmers from other farmers and doing different things. And just because you've done it the same way your whole life doesn't mean it's the only way. So it's nice to learn different options.
Yeah.
And I think me not growing up, I didn't grow up on a farm, so I didn't have a lot of stuff embedded in me. I worked on a farm milking from like 11 to 15, 16 years old. So I did learn a lot of just conventional farming, but I still wasn't raised from really young with it. So I think I have more desire to learn different ways of doing things, I guess.
You have a good balance of using old wisdom, but not afraid to try new things.
Yeah.
And sometimes new things work, and sometimes they don't. But you're always learning from it,
Right.
and you're able to share that with other people too. A lot of people are really interested in homesteading now, and even non-farmers, or
Yeah, the
you're kind
homesteading.
of learning how to teach people like that too.
Yeah, that's a big thing. And owning a cow cannot, especially in the homesteading environment, even in a farming environment, which there's farms doing this too, where you're calf sharing with the milk. So if you want to go on vacation, just put the calves on cows for a few days, and then when you come back, start milking again. You could do that easily if you had one cow, but I know that farms that do that, and it's way different than the conventional way of doing it, but it works. It can work. And it's just, we do another thing here, 1 a day milking, which is kind of unheard of in our country. I mean, there are farms doing it, but in New Zealand it's really popular. And that gives opportunity for more family life, like we were talking earlier. So
Yeah,
I can
that's
go to
really
kids'
important.
sports games in the evening if we milk in the morning. So my evenings are not tied to a certain time where I have to do this. We can do our evening chores whenever. So that's really nice for the dairy farming world. And we're not pushing for production as much as maybe another farm. So there's an offset, but I think the quality of life, in my eyes, is more important than getting a few extra pounds of milk. But I know there's financial things in that too, so we're trying to work that out, but it can happen, and there's a lot of success stories in the 1 a day milking world. So, and they're doing it conventionally, not just farming. I mean, large farms doing it.
In New Zealand.
Well, here
Or
too,
here.
up in New York, there's a 2,000 cow dairy that does it.
Wow.
And they graze. They have tunnels under the main roads to graze their cows in different places. I mean,
That's great.
yeah, it's one of my earlier farmer friends that I met in this grazing world down by Pittsburgh. I thought he had it all figured out, but he will really idolize this farm up in New York, and he's visited a few times. I haven't had the opportunity, but just farmers doing things a little differently, trying to keep their costs down because of this, everything's so expensive, machinery. So yeah, I do like machines and that, but I want to have as few as possible, the most efficient ones that I need, and then maybe custom hire other things. And learning that balance is tough, and figuring it out.
Now, as someone who kind of moved into the farming community later in life, you've been gathering all this wisdom from other farmers and learning from experience. And have there been any lessons that have surprised you, or just anything about farming that surprised you as you were learning?
Surprise, I don't know, but I guess I'm not sure if would that be the right word or not, but there has been a lot of times where an older farmer might, especially like community close by, would say, "Oh, you're gonna have a real problem doing it this winter," and I'm like, "I don't think so." And then sure enough, they're right. And I should have been like, "Yeah, I guess I should have listened to you." I told you, So that has happened a few times. Other times where they have said something and I did do it and I was like, "Oh wow, you're right. I didn't realize that, but I did try it," and just that kind of a thing. Or me doing something that's not conventional and they're like, "Yeah, I guess." In their eyes, they see that it worked, And a lot of older guys I know that I look up to as prior farmers, they didn't think we could do this milk business with raw milk. They thought you can't. And that is true. Like, I wanted to start a small farm. You can't just start a regular dairy farm with very few cows, or you're going to get nothing. And so it was almost like I was going into a business like where I'm never going to make it in their eyes. But I was determined to, but also we're doing it where we're trying to reach out more direct marketing. And I think it's working that way. And it did work. I mean, we're definitely doing a good job of it now. And so I think they're happy to see that because they figured this was just going to be a dismal failure. But they're surprised, and happy surprised, I guess.
So are you collaborating with other farmers, sharing wisdom and materials also?
Definitely wisdom, materials maybe, as in, yes. I have a friend that is a dairy farmer not too far from here. He sells organic milk to a truck, but we farm real similarly, so we share a lot of knowledge. We get excited about certain things. He's probably as excited or more than me about new ways of learning farming practices, and he's been raised in it his whole life. But
you shared a bull.
Yeah, we bought bull semen together. Went in, so our investment is smaller. An Amish friend of mine who's also, and the Amish community is not all into sustainable farming either. I mean, but this particular farmer is really in farming organic as well. And we get along real well, and we've shared fertilizer costs where we'll have a big semi-truck dumped fertilizer at our farm, and then we split it between us so that we don't have such a huge investment. And also he gets excited about some of the not newer ideas, but the ideas of rotational grazing and that. And I had the opportunity to visit another Amish farm who was on his last straw on dairy cows and just didn't know what to do, and he was going to try rotational grazing, and I kind of helped talk to him and maybe told him about his setup and how to rotate, and I think he's seen a lot of success with it and is really happy about it, because I think all the neighbors were like, "Why in the world are you splitting your field up so small?" And because he's had to do it with barbed wire. I mean, we don't have,
barbed.
So it was like, it was going to stay there. But he's seeing a lot of good things with that. So kind of neat to see that being tried.
Do you feel like there's adequate support for not only your family, but the farming families that you know?
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that's a hard one. I don't think I realized how much I enjoy talking to another farmer. That, it's one thing to read it on the internet, but another to talk to somebody who's doing it the similar way as you know exactly, but just kind of excited about it, and that is helpful. But I don't really know how. I would say, yeah, for me it's adequate support, but I don't really know how you would how every farmer can have that. I mean, you kind of have to go out of your way, and I just happen to meet them. I do think that the support through Conservation District, NRCS is there, and a lot of farmers don't know about it. I don't know how the word can get out better. A lot of farmers view it as something they don't want the government on their land. And I try to tell them it's not really like that, and if they wanted your land, they'd have it anyhow. You couldn't stop it. So I'm like, I think, it's a good thing if you can get into those programs, and we have, and I'm really happy that we did, because we've been involved with the local NRCS and Conservation District since we started 10 years ago.
Getting paid to work on your farm, basically.
For me,
since you do construction.
as a contractor, but even if not, contractor, you don't have to be a contractor. A lot of farmers can recoup all or most of their investment with different programs. So
and it's good for a growing farm too, to be able to get some of that infrastructure that is hard.
Right, that was a huge benefit to us. So I think the program's there, so that support is adequate, but the getting the word out, is not adequate, and I don't know how to improve it. It's just, I think it's needed. I think it's a good thing. Yeah. I don't necessarily think the government has to support farmers, in general, but having these programs like this is helpful, I think, because it can really help for upstart, like Becky said, or just infrastructure in general. Fencing is a big deal if you're going to rotational graze, and a lot of farms don't have that. So
I feel like something we're troubled by is the larger culture not being supportive of farming, and there is definitely certainly a subset of people who are really interested in more natural ways of eating and farming, but then the opposite side is people that are really into growing food in laboratories and are kind of, it's like a divergence, I don't know, and not wanting to have real meat and not wanting to have real milk, kind of finding substitutes for that and promoting that a lot. And even I don't know, we've had a lot of talk in this area about putting solar panels on all the fields instead of growing food on them. So I don't know if that's really, it's like unsupporting food growing in the interest of, greening the earth in a way, in an ironic way. But I think taking land for uses like that instead of growing food is kind of concerning to us.
Yeah, definitely.
It really puts a lot of pressure on the farmers. Like, Chris is always needing more land for animals or hay if he's going to grow. But then, people getting paid to put solar panels on their land will be way more money than he could ever rent the fields for. So it's putting kind of a limit on what the food growers can do, or the food growers expanding, if that makes sense. Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah, I think that there is a concern for how we're using our land, and there are concerning ways that it is being used, but saying that we have to switch 100% I don't think is the answer. I think we need to be more thoughtful in our ways that we're doing things presently, utilizing manures properly, utilizing grasses. Do we need as much grain for animals as we think we do, kind of a thing? Not that it's all wrong, but just thinking of things like that instead of just writing it off like, it'll never sustain the planet over time. I think it's the only way to sustain the planet over time, to do this in a proper way. And I think that, it really does bother me when it's so, there's certain groups against farming practices, or what we would say would be just normal farming practices in general. And it's kind of concerning. I mean, I don't know
It's
how
a-
big that is,
it's
really.
a-
Social media
Yeah.
and media in general is good at inflating things that might not be as
Yeah.
concerning as you think. But it can definitely change thoughts of people, so we have to be concerned about
Yeah,
that.
it's really emblematic of just people's separation from food and farming, I think. You know, people that are really disconnected about it, having opinions about it without really knowing the why of how or things are done. But makes sense. Maybe that's what your generation can do. You guys can do through this project.
I hope so.
Promote it.
I really hope so. Yeah, we'd love
I'm
to.
excited to see young people interested in it, and there is a counter movement to the laboratory grown food.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm happy
It's
to
big.
see it.
Very big.
Yeah.
You both seem to embody so much hope and faith in your farming practices. And I'm just wondering if there's ever a time that you thought about, giving up farming, turning to something else for a while, and why haven't you?
I mean, well, there's always a time where, some things
You're
could
like,
be
I'm gonna sell the farm.
a bit overwhelming, and you're just, gonna sell everything and go back to construction or something. But I love it too much to really do that.
Yeah.
But there are times where I have felt that way, I don't foresee me doing that unless the Lord directs me that way. But I think I have a desire to work with the land and animals, so I think it'll stay.
Farmers farm because they love it.
Yeah, it's
because
not-
it's profitable most of
Right.
the time, I think.
The
I mean,
life-
it is profitable, but not because you're gonna get rich.
Yeah,
farming.
the lifestyle is
really.
more important.
Yeah.
Raising a family,
Mhm.
just the closeness to food and animals, the land, in general, outside. I mean, I don't think I could ever
It's
be.
priceless.
Yeah, just sitting in here is almost too much inside. I mean, so I'm just who I am, I guess.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or you'd like people to know, or anything like that?
Buy local.
Yeah, buy local.
Drink raw milk.
Yeah, drink raw milk. It's good for you.
Is there anything you two would like to
I
ask?
have a couple questions.
Sure.
What advice would you guys both have to farmers that are just starting out, especially like couples? I feel like there is a different dynamic on a farm when there's two, like a family working together. Like, what advice would you have for those people?
Not to get. Well, first of all, to have some sort of a plan in place. Maybe not a plan that would be set into years, although some people plan way more detailed than others. But some
More
sort of
like
a
workflow.
some sort of a goal,
Yeah.
and then utilizing as much as you can with your own set of hands, your hands, your partner's hands, your kids' hands, whatever, and not trying to get it done necessarily as fast as you want it done, but to do it with the least amount of outside investment. Because experience that I have in business and all the business I've been involved with in construction or farming is whatever you start with as far as investment goes, that's what you have. Like, you can't go less than that. So I think it's just like I flipped lots of houses. Whatever you bought that house for is what you're stuck with, the purchase price. So like, try to utilize your own skills and learn. Like, there's a lot of things you can learn. You don't have to be a contractor to fix up a farm, although sometimes you might need to be. But like, I think that's key. And then starting small, like you want to have a whole bunch of different variety of animals or whatever, that's great. But maybe just focusing on beef, or you want to start with chickens and eggs. So as they say, you want to start with chickens, well then start with eggs, or start with meat chickens. Maybe not do both until you're ready to do both.
You'll learn.
You can get really overwhelmed fast.
Yeah, and you don't want to put so much infrastructure into it that you can't change it when you see that it doesn't work I think.
Yeah.
Like you want to be flexible.
But multiple
that way, so
things
you can
going
learn.
on too is stressful.
Yeah. Like learn as you. Don't be afraid of learning as you go, because you
And
don't really know when you're starting out. You'll have to see how
the
it works.
biggest advice of all, though, is don't worry about failing, because that's what farming is: failing and then learning from it. And that's, if you look at some of the great inventors, business people, over time, they all failed miserably, but they didn't quit. So just don't give up when you fail. Think of it as learning. I feel like I'm not as good as that as others. Like there's some farmers that literally had, say, maybe a $500,000 mistake in one day, and they're like, oh, it's just another hurdle for the day. You know, you got to think of it like that instead of just being like devastated where you're done. And I think don't be afraid of failure.
I don't know how to ask this question and not make it seem like I'm interrogating you, so I just keep that in mind. You talked about like there are some policies and like regulations that make it harder to like successfully run your business. Are there any like in particular things that you would like to see change in policy that would be beneficial to you?
Okay, yeah. So I think it's sometimes the regulation, let's say for milk testing, I think milk testing is good, but it seems like the costs involved with it are so high. So like getting a raw milk permit is free, but there's only a few labs doing the testing, and it's super expensive. And then they like doubled their prices in a matter of months. So like that bothers me that there's not enough other labs out there to compete with each other. That it makes it super expensive to produce a product that I don't know that it needs to be that expensive to test milk.
That's really the main
That's one thing, but the regulation, as far as like a state regulation, would be they don't, like certain states do. So our state, let's say Pennsylvania, doesn't allow the sale of raw cream, because if you would produce raw cream, you have to take it out of the tank, and there is a bit of processing. You'd have to separate the cream from the skim milk. So our state says you can't do that without pasteurizing that cream because it left the tank. It's going through multiple, and I understand the reasoning there, but I think there's a way it could be produced in still a sanitized environment. And so that bothers me because we have an opportunity to sell, or that we have an interest in it, and we can't do it. And so then I have to decide, do we want to go forward and try to do this pasteurized cream business? And it's another huge expense. So it's kind of limiting my growth, but maybe putting it on hold until I can decide, is the investment worth it? And then we have a lot of people that would rather have the raw cream that can't get it.
Want
it. That's kind of one of those things where you feel kind of stuck. That's one that's close to us as far as our regulation, but I'd like to see changed a little. In this state, there's states that do allow it. So I'm thankful that our state allows the sale of raw milk. So that in itself I'm thankful for. Does that answer?
Yes, that was what I was looking for. I just didn't want it to be like, tell me what you don't like,
Yeah.
I mean, on like a happier note, go ahead.
I was going to say another thing is just, we have to say it's raw cream and we have to, raw milk. We have to use all of these, notices. Like we can't call it fresh milk when we're advertising. We have to say it's raw milk, and it's just, I don't know. They should call the other milk cooked milk. Like if we have to call it raw milk, it's kind of just, I don't know if that's really a policy.
I think we could say that, but
yeah,
we just have to have the sign up inside that says
maybe it's not. But it's just, I don't know, one of those. one of those things.
I
guess I would say you have to put cooked milk on the milk in the store. That would be the policy that I want.
Because I feel like that would definitely keep people, like if you hear raw milk, it means something different than just milk at the store.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's all just about the language we use to talk about it. So then you have to have that education, you know. And I mean, just the whole idea, we were talking about this the other day, like, you sell raw meat and raw vegetables and people are allowed to buy it. Why? Why can't you sell raw milk? And people, you know, it's their discretion to cook it if they want it to be safe, you know. That's kind of like a higher level thought, I guess. It's already too late for that. It's regulated, but just a thing to think about, I guess. You're allowed to sell other things that need to be cooked before eating. Some people do eat the meat raw, like raw liver, but we don't recommend that. Whatever. Certain customers do that, and they're allowed to. We're allowed to sell it to them, raw eggs, knowing they might consume it raw. Yeah, raw eggs too. It's just a funny thing. So,
I guess you talked about having family time. Are there like other things that you guys do to alleviate the stress that comes with your lifestyle?
We can't get away for vacation very easily, so we have a campsite at the back of our property. We like to camp.
That was a huge thing, and it's far enough away and far enough removed, even though it's not that far, to get the feel for it. And we all love it. I mean, the kids just love it. I like it, and it's easy to get back here and do your work in the morning, but still get away from things. And it's, even though it's kind of a small thing, and we're, even from day one on this farm, when we did the NRCS fencing project, I wanted that for a recreation area. We left that out on purpose, and I had like a dream someday to do that. And so we're doing it. It's still not to where I would like it, but I didn't really realize how helpful it would be, since you can't get away that easy. I mean, we can get away, but in this time of growth, it's been hard too, because the procedures are changing, and the milk time is kind of difficult for somebody to just come and do it, but we're putting in a whole new system that's going to allow, I think, for anybody to come in and milk, you know, that we've trained or whatever. So I think there's also that horizon to see come in, that we'll be able to maybe go away for a few days easier, which we do and will still do it, but with maybe more times a year than just once or twice.
Yeah.
And even my children, like my older kids, they can milk, but this would help them be able to milk better too, which would help. And some of them have interest in it that I think they would like, and I think this would make it easier for them to do it. So, just things like that.
Yeah. And also, I think something that made it less stressful during COVID, especially when a lot of people were feeling isolated, we have everybody coming here to visit us all the time to buy the milk. A lot of the customers have become friends, and friends have become customers.
I would say,
and family likes visiting here.
Yeah,
and
being a direct marketing farm is different. It's a lot different. Direct marketing your product, people coming to your farm.
Yeah.
It can be annoying in some way, because you have everybody coming to your place.
Yeah, some people don't know that
but
we have regular hours.
We have business hours. Most people respect that, and we have people from all over the spectrum of city, urban setting, country, a lot of different ethnicities, a lot of different people groups. Kind of neat to meet that many different people at your farm without leaving home. And like Becky said, during COVID, people couldn't do that much. Well, they could get food. So they were able to get food here, and still we could talk and converse. And I think that was helpful for us and for them. So, yeah, direct marketing has has some ways of keeping you from being too isolated as a farmer.
And I think for you and for certain of our kids who like routine, having the farm makes life less stressful, because you know, like, you have that routine every morning. You do the same thing every morning, and
yeah,
maybe that would drive some people crazy, but you like that.
I'm that type of person.
Our son Zeke is like that.
Yeah.
Like those two really just, that is a stress reliever
Farming,
for them, is to have that.
Yeah,
every
farming
day.
has its challenges. You're not. People are like, oh, it's the same thing every single day, which, yeah, there is the same structure, but what you do can change like crazy. But I like the structure of having to get out of bed every day. And then I lost my wife 9 years ago. So right after we started this farm, and that was a time that I did feel like giving up on things. But having the farm made me get out of bed every day. Yes, I had 6 children at the time, which was a challenge in itself. But I didn't feel like doing anything, but I had to. And I did think about, that was probably the biggest time I thought about getting rid of everything. But because I had to do it, and I did like farming, it got me through that time. Along with my faith, but I mean, as far as just your everyday life, that was a huge help to be able to have that everyday structure. And yeah, I thrive on that kind of structure. So
It's really interesting to hear that, like, the stressful thing is also, like, your stress reliever.
yeah,
That's really cool.
right, that's true.
Also, just drinking a big glass of
Yeah.
We both really love milk.
Mm-hmm.
It's important.
Yeah.
The kids don't. There's not any kids who like really love milk all that much though. So the 2 youngest still really love it.
With like recently we had a farm in the neighborhood that sold. Does any of that ever factor in, like, your, I don't know, maybe I'm gonna butcher this question, but like concerns or just thoughts of, like, even in the past 10 years we've seen a lot of farms that have changed hands or sold,
Yeah.
and then even one within the past couple months that have sold out completely.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely have thoughts about all those things. Like, I'm always happy to see a farm, if it's sold, to go to another farmer. That helps me even if I'm not the one to buy it. I think it's good because it seems to me that we have a problem, and this is, I don't know if it would come in the urban sprawl talk, but it definitely, there's people that might not be into farming that would buy land and put a house in the middle of that field. Well, that field is never going to be farmed again in the way that it was, and that bothers me. So to see another farmer buying I like that, and there are times when I wish I could buy more land, and I guess everybody has their own amount of debt load they want. Well, I don't want much at all, if any. So, like, I have a plan in my mind when I'd be ready to do that. But when I see it, I'm like, oh, I wish I could, or if I was ready, but not. I guess the biggest thing is I'm happy to see it still being farmed when that happens, if another farmer purchases it, because a lot of times it doesn't happen. And I just really hope that they're thoughtful of their land. The best view is nice, but sometimes to think ahead and, like, how should we utilize our land that we're purchasing for the future?
Well, one thing that's sad about that farm in particular, which I think you're both talking about, is he farmed non-GMO grains, corn, right, and then that he supplied the person we buy grain from. So that's kind of a sad thing. He's having trouble finding sources
he did.
of
We
it,
did finally,
which affects us. He did find it.
But still, we want to see more sustainable methods, I guess.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
But like one farm going out affects a whole bunch of people for that reason. I mean, in this specific case, it affected the grain supplier, and then a lot. We trade like a lot of people will bring their eggs in exchange for milk, and then we sell them, and all of those people were buying grain, like non-GMO grain from this person too. So it's just a domino effect.
Any other questions?
I think so.
Are we taking up too much of your time? Is that okay?
No, good right
Are you
now.
taking up too much of your time?
No.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm talking.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we have. If you want, we would always be interested in like knowing what a day in your farm looks like. If you need to do your thing, we are good.
I could go over it. Like, you mean to walk around or
Yeah,
to
whatever you feel more comfortable doing. But I think it's
a
really
typical day on the farm?
We want to be able to make sure that the people that we're talking to, like, not you, but like everyone who gets to hear the story, like understands not only like all of this like thought process things that you guys are going through on a daily basis, but also like the actual things that you are doing to make your farm run.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I can start with
Manure
that.
and all.
What?
Manure and all. A lot of it's moving manure around.
So yeah, I'd say typical day. Our typical days, not super early, but about 6:30. I try to get up and get outside a little before 7.
Some coffee with
Low
raw cream in it.
Definitely coffee. Yeah, and cream.
I forgot that this morning.
Anyhow, so our cows are rotational graze, so seems like most of the time they're waiting to come in, but sometimes we have to go out in the field and get them, bring them in, but more than not, they're already standing at the gate waiting. We bring them into the barn. We milk in a milking parlor, so it's basically a room where the cows would come into, and we are in like what would be called like a pit. So we're below the cows so that we can see their udder straight on instead of having to bend over. So it's a back saving type of a room, a little bit more modern. I mean, still old parlor, but a more modern way of farming, milking cows. And we milk them in groups of 4 or 5 at a time, and we give them molasses. So we have to get the molasses ready. We put it in a trough in front of them. And then I have to assemble all of my milking components that have been sanitized the day before. And then we clean the cow thoroughly, the udder, not the whole cow. You could, I guess, but you might need to. Some cows, but ours are pretty clean most of the time. So clean them off, and then we can milk. And we have a big cooling tank, what's called a bulk tank, that we pour the milk into. Presently, we're going to have a pipeline going in there soon.
And to be clear, you have a pump and
well, yeah, I was getting there.
Oh, okay, sorry.
But anyhow,
We don't milk by
so yeah, we have a vacuum pump that we can collect the milk into a vacuum sealed bucket and pour it into a bulk tank as we milk. We do that, and in the meantime, that is when all my kids are up and awake, and they are during this time they're feeding calves that need fed. Some need bottles, some get milk in a container, or not a container, like a trough, and they all get hay. We have chickens that need fed, watered. They get hay and water. Chickens get water and grain, collect eggs. We have sheep that need fed hay. While I'm milking, my dad is moving fencing so that the cows could be in a new paddock, which is a new space in the field for grazing. So that happens daily. In the winter time, that grazing outside doesn't happen as much. But with our beef cows, we do graze, and dairy sometimes we'll do bale grazing in certain paddocks, which means we'll take a round bale and unroll it in a small area
Okay.
of hay. Of what?
I set up It's hay.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Whatever.
Some people may not know. I wouldn't have known
I didn't
before I came here.
know what you were talking about. But anyhow, we allow the animals to eat that out in the field so that we don't have to, I don't know if process is the right word, but move so much manure. So when the animals are inside in the winter, there's a lot of manure process. So we're scraping manure a lot. Even when they're not in there, we're doing a little bit. 'Cause just them walking into the barn, you have to scrape. But manure storage is important, which we have a facility that was from a grant project we did. We store that manure and spread it on the fields when the weather is best. And that's part of our day is scraping to there, of the everyday things. Just making sure everything's clean and operational. Then you would, after that, you would do different things. Like in the summer, we're maintaining fence, cutting hay if we need to be. In the early summer, you're planting or preparing a field to plant something. When you cut hay, you want to put manure on it after, so you got to plan on fertilizing times throughout the day, or throughout the month, I guess. And then maintaining equipment, everything needs fixed or oiled or greased or that kind of a thing. That's part of everyday work.
This year we've done a lot of kind of cleaning out of different areas around the farm to make space for equipment, and kind of you have a master plan in your mind about how things are going to be oriented around the farm. So
Right.
kind of to make the equipment accessible and such. We have a goat that I've been trying to move her to a different part to eat weeds around the farm every day.
Well, that helps, yeah.
So,
And then at certain times of the year we have pigs, so we're late getting them this year just because it's been hard to get them. But we'll usually have pigs. Sometimes we have our own sow, but we don't this year. And we'll get piglets and raise them for customers too. But that's another part of the day is just caring for the pigs.
our kids are training our kittens to like them and to drink milk. And so the kittens grow up and they're the pest control. So it's kind of an important job.
They're kind of important.
And the cats are nice.
And also,
people,
yeah,
that's
our barn cats are well tamed because of our kids, which is also a benefit to our customers because a lot of kids that come don't have any animals at all. Yeah. Even a little kitten's a big deal for them, but it's nice to have that, I guess.
Yes. And then not usually, but you leave to do construction.
Yeah, that's another part of my day is doing a construction project. So it depends on the day. Some days it's farming all day, some days it's farming all morning. So we finish up those daily chores I was talking about maybe around 9:30, 10. It just depends on exactly what we're doing. And then the rest of the day would be different farming things you're doing in the field work or even animal care. Or I have opportunities to work off the farm doing a small construction project, which we do fairly locally. And that's another adjustment is a lot of our customers that I take are ones that are okay with me farming and I'm not going to rip their kitchen out. We'll do different things. I used to do maybe more of that kind of work, but now we don't do as much kitchen remodeling. So, yeah, that's about it. And then in the evening, we'd have evening chores. And so we finish those. It depends on when we start, but sometimes we don't even start until 8 a.m. So it's an all-day event. I mean, you definitely have breaks, but you're working from basically morning till night doing something.
Yeah, in the evening,
I get bored
do another
easy.
set of watering and feeding the animals. The older boys do that usually.
It's a type of lifestyle, like we said earlier, so I enjoy it, but you don't get a lot of downtime. I do like to have a little bit of time in the evening, even if it's an hour, just to sit down and read or whatever.
Look at YouTube videos about tractors.
Or farming.
Let's be honest.
But to be truthful, that hour is really important to me. Because without it, then I will feel burned out. But all I need is like an hour.
Do tea.
Yeah, tea.
Drink tea every night. Chester. That's the newest one we're trying to tame.
Awesome. Thank you so much. If you have any
Thank
other,
you so much.
And I cook and do laundry. That's about it.
Wow, what about
No,
that
just kidding.
crazy garden and all the...
Yeah,
do
I
a lot
guess I
of
do
stuff.
some food. Mostly for fun.
That's a pretty nice garden. I think it's a little
Yeah.
bit
Yeah,
of
it's
Takes a lot of
impressive.
work to do
Yeah, it's
that.
actually not, I mean, setting it up's a lot of work, but then it goes pretty much. He taught me to put grass clippings on it, so there's not too much waiting. That's pretty good.
And are all the kids in school during the school year?
I homeschool though.
You do?
So
Okay.
yeah, that's
Giant
like during the
project.
school year. Okay, so
That's-
laundry, dishes, and schooling.
That's
That's
huge.
That's a
huge-
pretty big task.
Yeah,
nice.
so the summer is nice. There's more time for outside stuff in the summer, but yeah. So yeah, I mean, for science, I don't do as much science with them because I consider like our farming to be a big part of their education too. So
And the construction.
yeah, the construction too. They all work.
A lot of math.
Yeah,
Good to learn.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Pythagorean theorem, practical experience there. Make those corners straight, right?
For sure.
So.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to? If there's any thoughts you have later on, where you're like, oh, we should have said this, or just reach out to us.
Sounds good.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
for-
letting us come back.